It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And good morning to the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are indeed broadcasting live from our studios in downtown Nashville. We are delighted to have you listening to us today. You can also watch us on YouTube. There we are. Go to Michael Patrick Leahy YouTube, and you can also listen to us online with the John Fredericks Radio app. It is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. It's time for the Morning Rundown, brought to you by the Glock Store, located right here in Nashville, Tennessee, just a couple miles from the airport. Glockstore.com. It is the number one supplier of Glock accessories in the country. So here we go. Here is the Morning Rundown for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. Number one, more backlash to Joe Biden's comprehensive pardon of his son Hunter for any and all federal crimes in the past 10 years and 11 months. And boy, is it heating up for him. Number two, we'll have a preview of the SCOTUS oral argument tomorrow, U.S. v. Scrimeti. This is where the crazy loons at the ACLU are suing the state of Tennessee. Jonathan Scrimeti is our Attorney General because of a law passed here that does three things. One, prevents genital mutilation of minors, prevents puberty blockers for minors, and prevents hormone therapy for gender transition for minors under the age of 18. This particular lawsuit only deals with the puberty blockers and hormone therapy. They're not saying that they're going to challenge the prohibition of genital mutilation rather, for kids under the age of 18. That'll be very interesting. I predict 6-3 or 7-2 win for the state of Tennessee, to be announced probably in May or June. Number three, this concerns me, but it's very on brand for Donald Trump. He is traveling to Paris in the next couple days, Paris, France, to commemorate the rebuilding of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Of course, the site of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and an icon of Western culture. A bunch of Islamist terrorists tried to burn it down back 5 years ago. It took them 5 years to rebuild it. It looks beautiful. But what am I concerned about? The president-elect of the United States going to Paris, France? What level of security is he going to have? Inquiring minds want to know. But look, it's what he's going to do. So, and it makes sense, but I sure hope he's got high levels of security there. Number four, we'll be joined at the bottom of this hour by our good friend, investigative reporter Laura Logan, previously with 60 Minutes, also has been with Fox News. She joins us to talk about growing up in South Africa and moving to the United States, and what she has in common with Elon Musk, who did exactly the same thing. Number five, E.J. Haast joins us in the second hour. And number six, Clint Brewer, recovering journalist, joins us in the third hour. Number seven, Ron DeSantis. He came out vigorously yesterday to defend Kash Patel, Donald Trump's nominee to head the FBI, and for good reason. Yeah, he really lays into the deep state and the FBI. So there you go. That is the Morning Rundown for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. It is brought to you by our friends at the Glock Store, glockstore.com. Now, I have some good news for you. If you're listening right now and you want to get that Glock accessory, here's the thing that you need to do. Go to glockstore.com. Their special deals, the Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals, are continued until today. Deals like 22% off their famous Glock Store tungsten and stainless steel guide rods. It's always been one of their most popular products. They make them right here in the USA in their Nashville, Tennessee manufacturing facility. I've been there. They've got a dozen of these huge CNC machines made by a company called Haas, which is a terrific American company. And they make all these accessories there. It's just fantastic. Glockstore.com, always will have the lowest prices in the country on Glock factory magazines. And for this week, or today, actually, just today, they're continuing the Black Friday week. They've slashed their prices even lower as their founder, CEO, and friend, and famous, got to start as a singing waiter, Lenny McGill, always says, quote, "You can never have too many magazines, and what a great stocking stuffer." There you go, for the Glock guy or gal in your life. And remember, when I talked to you about the 10-day optic cut only deal a few weeks back, well, thanks to your great response, Lenny McGill has decided to take $50 off the 10-day optic cut only service. Now they're all the way up to over 16,000 slides, and they've done them all within that 10-day or less time frame. The deals continue until this evening at midnight. Don't delay. Quantities are limited on some items. You don't want to miss out. The great Black Friday deals continue until today at midnight for my personal friend, Lenny McGill, CEO and founder of Glock Store. That's at glockstore.com, glockstore.com. Okay, well, we've got some interesting little tidbits here. Let's start off with something kind of fun. Peter Doocy at Fox News. This story is incredible. You remember Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Canada, was all upset because Donald Trump said, we're going to slash 25% tariffs. We're going to add 25% tariffs on everything from Canada unless you clean up the border and keep all these terrorists from coming in from the north. Well, Justin Trudeau got on a plane, went down to Mar-a-Lago. And, well, this is what ensued. Here's a report from Peter Doocy.
And tonight we're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor. Right.
But more on that.
That's kind of fun. The other element of that, by the way, the people at that table, I saw the picture of it, right? I've never been down in Mar-a-Lago. I think it's on the bucket list. I'm going to go down sometime. And it's apparently, kind of a very high-end facility. They've got this big dining area. He was sitting at a table. And there's Trump in all of his glory, surrounded by all of these people that are, either serving him or looking for something from him. There was Justin Trudeau sitting right next to him. And then off to the side, you may recall Doug Burgum, our friend and former and the current governor of North Dakota, the nominee to be the head of the Department of Interior, was sitting there. I don't think he was the source. He's not the kind of guy to be a source. But somebody was the source for that conversation. And Doug, of course, would know because North Dakota borders Canada. I think Manitoba is like right up above North Dakota. I've been to North Dakota. It's a great place to go in the summer for like a day. Okay. But the point on all this is, Canada, I've got a connection to Canada. My family, my dad was born in Canada, in Hemingford, Quebec, as a matter of fact. And he was born there in 1929, lived there until he was, 18, and crossed over to the border and started working on a farm. And, when he was like 19, he got a letter from the United States Army. They said, hey, we noticed that you're residing here in the United States on a work visa. We'll give you a choice. You can go back to Canada, or you can enlist in the U.S. Army, and when you get out, we'll make you a citizen. He chose the latter, and he never looked back. We'll have more when we get back. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of The Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Want to talk about all of the backlash that's coming against Joe Biden's really ridiculous pardon of his son, Hunter Biden. This pardon was broader than any pardon a president has ever done, as far as we can tell. And basically, Hunter Biden has been pardoned from any federal crimes he's either been charged with or may have committed over a 10-year, 11-month period, beginning on January 1st, 2014, and ending December 1st of 2024. That is a long time. Usually, when presidential pardons come in, they are for crimes that have been charged and often convicted. The party's been convicted and may have, in some cases, actually served the time. That's the case with Jared Kushner's father. He was convicted of a crime. I think he served some time. It was some kind of financial thing. Put him in jail was Chris Christie, by the way. And Trump gave him a pardon, which is, okay, but he did the time. A guy who I don't think is going to ask for a pardon and may or may not accept one if offered is Stephen K. Bannon. He's defiantly wearing that 4 months prison sentence he served in Danbury, Connecticut, as a badge of honor, I think, for him, for a corrupt state. Now, let me tell you what the reaction is telling us about this. I think what this means is the lying of Joe Biden and the lying of all of his acolytes, including Karine Jean-Pierre. So cringy, and it's such a violation of basic understanding of integrity, right? Joe Biden said repeatedly, "I will not pardon my son." And we've got all these clips of Karine Jean-Pierre saying he'll never pardon his son. And that, boom, he does again. And people look at this and say, why should I believe anything you say? Well, look, for those of us who started and been part of the Tea Party movement, the populist conservative movement, this has been our point for 16 years, right? Now, however, this is such egregious behavior that the defense of this egregious behavior by the regime media, it's just not playing very well. In fact, the more the regime media defends it, the more people move away from the regime media. Now, one guy who's dishing it out against the regime media, on the regime media, is Scott Jennings, who, he went after some of the defenders of this. It is so Orwellian. Biden says, "I'll not pardon my son." KJP says, he'll not pardon his son. And then he pardons his son, and Biden says, "Well, of course I pardoned him. Did you? Why were you paying attention to anything I ever said before?" KGB said, "No, he was not lying." What? Yeah, it's called a lie. Look in the dictionary. All right, so here's this clip. I got to play this. Scott Jennings talking about the Democrat brain rot. Clip 13.
every American except the most partisan, brain-rotted people are going to be outraged by this today. He is going to leave off. You think 38, 39% job approval is bad? Just you wait. Just you wait. He's disgraced today. Outrageous.
You don't need to, but Scott, you don't need to hurl names and say people like me are brain rotted. Come on, that's a little.
Can we just pause it here for a
for
second?
you,
I'll bring it
Scott.
back. You don't need to say, you meanie. You don't need to say people like me who are saying, oh yeah, he didn't really lie, even though he did, are brain rotted. Lady, yes, he does, because you are in fact brain rotted. Okay, let's continue with this.
Come on, that's a little beyond the pale, even for you, Scott.
Listen,
I
I
disagree.
stand
We
up
can
for yourself.
disagree about
You don't
this,
have
but
to
we don't
defend
have
this.
to call
He's
each other
leaving
names.
office. You don't have to defend it. You don't have to die on this hill. You can say this is wrong because
I'm
everybody
fine
knows
with
that
it,
it is.
Scott. That's why I'm
It's
defending
wrong.
it.
Are you
Karen?
fine with the lying? Are you
I say
fine
good
with
for
him
Joe
sitting
Biden.
before the election all year and lying to the American people? Are you fine with the lying about it?
I don't think that he was lying. I think he made a decision.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
after
whoa,
the
whoa, whoa,
fact.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. This is why people love this Jennings guy, right? Did you hear what she just said? This brain-rotted CNN Democrat. I don't think he was lying. He was asked, will you pardon your son? No. Will you pardon your son? No. Will you pardon his son? No. His press secretary asked innumerable times, will Joe Biden pardon his son? No. No, never. No, 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 no. Hear me. No, no, no. Won't do it. I don't think he was lying. What do you think he was doing? That's a definition of a lie. Let's go more on this.
Decision after the fact and decided this was the right thing for him and for his family. Period. Full stop. Donald Trump
Do we not
decided
have
that
the
it
minute-
was okay to
and
pardon.
Joe Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre, how many minutes of tape do we have of both of these people telling the American people this will not happen? It's I mean, we could play it all morning. It's a lie, and it's a lie to benefit his own family, and that's
fine,
all
but
that it
let's
is.
just-
And everybody who
let's
went on
just-
TV and said, oh, look how he's the
calling
modern
us-
George Washington. He's drained every ounce of credibility from every surrogate. If Karine Jean-Pierre had an ounce of self-respect, she'd get off the plane in Africa today where they're going so he can avoid the press and resign. He's drained all of her credibility, and everybody else who's defended this, it's draining for them forever. Go.
Okay, let's go. It's brain rot draining. Of course, if she had any integrity, she doesn't have any because she's like, whatever. Oh, what do you want me to say? What lie do you want me to tell today? I'm all for that. This is why the regime media is just plummeting. Now, it was also on CNN that another anchor actually put left-wing propagandist Congressman Dan Goldman on the spot with his previous statements that, oh, Joe Biden will never pardon his son. Here we go. Clip 12, I think, with Dan Goldman.
In July of 2023, just after that plea deal fell through, this is what you said. I want to watch.
Do you think a pardon for his son would be a mistake?
Yes, and I don't think there's any chance that President Biden is going to do that, unlike his predecessor, who pardoned all of his friends and anyone who had any access to him. And I think you see that in this case, where he kept on, and Merrick Garland kept on, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to investigate the president's son. If there is not an indication of the independence of the Department of Justice beyond that, I don't know what we could look for.
What does that feel like, watching yourself back then, reassuring people that Biden was not going to issue a pardon for his son?
Yeah, and I think that if that plea agreement and that plea deal had gone through, there would be no pardon. That was a satisfactory outcome.
It already fallen
that
through.
Only was.
So this is in a rare case of exhibiting journalism. That CNN anchor pointed out, oh, no, you made that statement after the deal fell through. Hubba. Now, here's what's interesting about this. That guy, Dan Goldman, and then a bunch of other, lying liars of the left, they're graduates of elite law schools and elite schools. So Gabe Goldman's a Harvard Law School guy, and Jamie Raskin, who's equally bad, is a Harvard Law School guy. Just because somebody went to Harvard Law School doesn't mean they're an honest person. In fact, it often means exactly the opposite. And in this case, I think Dan Goldman is demonstrating that. What's happening here? The veil of dishonesty and deception is being removed from the public square, and people are just seeing what a bunch of lying shills most regime media members are, and most Democrats. I mean, how could anybody be a member of the Democratic Party today and defend Joe Biden with that pardon? Oh, and by the way, that pardon of Hunter Biden, ooh, that is just the beginning. Why did he pardon him? Well, because he was about to be sentenced, and he's going to, sing about how he was the bagman for Daddy-O. How much money came to these guys? $23 million plus. They sold off the country for $23 million. But Hunter Biden will not be the only pardon to a Biden family member. Look for his brothers, his wife, anybody part of his extended family. They're getting a pardon. What do you want for Christmas? A pardon from Joe Biden. Hey, when we come back, this is going to be a lot of fun. Laura Logan, the great investigative journalist, will join us. She's going to talk about growing up in South Africa, coming to America, what she and Elon Musk have in common. Back after this.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. We welcome to our newsmaker line our good friend Laura Logan, the intrepid and brave investigative reporter. Laura, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Michael.
So I wanted to have you on because there's something going on here with South Africans who moved to the United States. I only know two personally. I know you because you were born in South Africa. And then my good friend Joel Pollack was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, came to the United States, and he's, of course, now a senior editor at Breitbart. But there's another very famous South African-born American citizen, Elon Musk. Now, I don't know a lot about South Africa, Laura. There are only kind of two things I know about. I saw the movie Zulu, right? Michael Caine, 1964.
Yes, that's right.
And then I saw another movie, like late 1980s, Breaker Morant.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
That's all I know about South Africa. So tell us about, what is it about people from South Africa who come to the United States at a young age and make their mark? Tell us about that experience.
Well, I think sometimes when you grow up in a place, it's hard to see. It's like being in the middle of a tsunami, right? You can't see the storm raging around you because you are right in the eye of the storm. So when you live in the United States, there's a lot of things you take for granted because that's human nature. I mean, if you grow up and you never know what hunger is, then you take food, you typically take it for granted. And even though intellectually you can understand, wow, I understand, how lucky I am, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same. If you've never reached the end of the week and you've run out of money and you haven't been scraping around in the bottom of your car looking for pennies to put together to buy a frozen pizza to feed your children that night, you can't imagine what that stress is really like. And so it's a little bit like that when you live in the United States. You assume almost that every country has a Bill of Rights and that every country was founded on a covenant with God, and that what makes the United States special, I mean, a lot of people appreciate that, but I don't know if you can really understand what it means, the power that the people here have, because they were born and raised in this country with this sense of, of individual liberty. And, in other places, you may feel that that is your right. You may believe that that is your right. But in the United States, you actually have a roadmap to what that means. You have more than just a right to it. You have a duty and a responsibility to fight for that and to protect it. And when you look across the world and you see that there are things that happen overseas that you would never expect or tolerate in the United States of America, that's a real thing. So for me, I grew up under apartheid in South Africa, which was a system of government that was racially based. It was racial segregation that was justified and codified in the law. And of course, as human beings, even when you grow up in that kind of environment, fortunately, I had parents who taught me to think for myself. But I knew that was wrong. I knew before I could even really understand what it meant. I knew it was wrong. I knew in my heart and in my soul, and it caused me a pain, even as a little girl. I'll never forget standing in the line of a 7-Eleven, and there was a long line of customers. It was a Saturday morning. I was there with my father. I was about 8 years old. And there was a very old African gentleman who was standing there. His hair was all gray, and he was very thin and very wrinkled. And I remember he was holding his pennies with two hands, and he had a loaf of bread, just a simple loaf of bread that he was trying to buy. And the shopkeeper was actually Indian, and I will say South Africa has the highest populations of Indians who live outside of India. And so it is, in fact, in many ways, a very diverse place. And the shopkeeper was not interested in helping this gentleman. He was ignoring him as person after person was going up to the front, and buying things. And when we got to the front, my dad and I, because we'd stood in the line for a long time, my father motioned to this gentleman who was standing there, and the shopkeeper sort of dismissed him with his hand and said, forget about him, And my father said, I never forget this moment. He said, "No, I don't think you understand. This gentleman has been waiting." And he was in a stare down with the shopkeeper, who reluctantly motioned to the man to step forward and counted out his pennies with, annoyance, and then and let him buy his loaf of bread. Well, you don't need to be able to write the law or read the law to know in your heart and soul that what you witnessed is wrong. And that kind of thing, I grew up, of course, thinking that was unique to South Africa and that there was something wrong with the place that I was born and raised. And so I dedicated, my young life was very much revolved around making this right. And I chose journalism as a way to make that right because I knew I wasn't born for activism. It was fairly obvious because there were things that happened in South Africa. People during the struggle against apartheid, the struggle for equal rights and for justice for all, and the things that you may take for granted in the United States if you've known them all your life. The struggle for that was a noble struggle. And it was overwhelming. It overwhelmed your whole existence if you were involved in it the way I was. And you knew that this one shining example, right, that there was living proof that this is how it was meant to be, because that was the United States of America. That's what it represented. And so it wasn't just aspirational. It wasn't just something that people clung to. There was a real living, breathing example of what was right and true. So that was the validation of what was in your heart. That was the validation of what you knew instinctively as if you believed in basic human decency. You knew that it was possible. And more than possible, the success of the United States, right, was further evidence that it wasn't just possible, it was right. And so that, that infected every part of your life. When I saw people fighting and dying sometimes for justice and for freedom, this idea that we're endowed with inalienable rights by our Creator, that these things are bigger than mankind. I've seen what it is when men take those rights and manipulate them or turn their back on them or dismiss them for personal gain. I've seen what it is when men rule instead of ruling according to principles that are endowed by something much greater than all of us. And I can't speak for Elon Musk, and I can't speak for Charlize Theron. She's another South African who's done extremely well. But I can only speak for myself and for the South Africans that I know, and there were many of us. There's an entrepreneurial spirit, there's a spirit of innovation, but more than anything else, there is an understanding that we are not the center of the world. Because when you grow up on a small patch of dirt, on the very tip of Africa, thousands of miles away from the centers of power that drive the world, that you're kind of irrelevant in a broad strategic geopolitical sense. And yet, at the same time, people beat a path to Nelson Mandela's door, didn't they? When he would be at the United Nations or wherever it was globally, there would be leader after leader after leader would want to stand and have their photograph taken with Nelson Mandela. And why was that? Because the principles that he stood for, the sacrifices that he made, those represent humanity. They didn't just represent his tribe of Xhosa in South Africa or black South Africans or just South Africans. They represent any decent human being on the face of the earth. For me, Nelson Mandela sort of walks in the footsteps of George Washington and the founding fathers, because this was a man who put himself last and who understood that principles were nothing if you didn't sacrifice everything you could for them. And so this is a man whose words have echoed throughout the world. When he was accused, maybe people don't know his story, but he was born, as a poor boy in a very remote part of South Africa on the coast, a place where my father had a home. It was more of a shack, to be honest with you. It didn't even have electricity, but we loved it, and we would be there we would go there on vacation every year. We'd be there for my birthday because it was over Easter, and and we were absolutely enthralled by that place. It was wild and beautiful, and those are the fires in which Mandela's soul was forged, but he grew up to be this extraordinary political figure who ultimately was arrested on terrorism charges, and then was imprisoned. And for years, Nelson Mandela was offered his freedom, and he turned it down because he didn't want conditional freedom that was based on lies. He wouldn't bear false witness. So he stayed behind bars, and he really was the inspiration of generations of resistance in South Africa, where people put everything aside to fight for the rights of all. And so there was a nobility in your suffering, there was a nobility in your poverty and your struggle and everything, because you were part of something that was greater than all of us and touched people all across the world. And those fires were born, out of the same things that the founding fathers etched into the Constitution, those very same principles. And if you look back through time, it goes all the way back to the Spartans, right? Men are born free, and we are meant to be free. And so this living, breathing example of the United States, where people are not just born free, but where your freedoms are recognized and codified, and they mean something. And you know that the power of the people overwhelms all evil. Everything that is bad in the world can be overcome when people come together and unite. That was the spirit of Nelson Mandela, and it was the spirit of the United States, and it was the thing that kept us going through
and brought you here to the United States.
Brought me here.
Yeah, you worked in the United Kingdom for a while. Now you live in Texas. Why did you pick Texas to live in the United States?
Because there's that outlaw spirit in Texas. I live about 10 minutes from Lukenbach, Texas, which, if you're a country music fan, you'll know what that place is. It's the home of outlaw country music. And in a sense, free men are outlaws in a way. Of course, there's a great reverence for law and order, because there's an understanding of what those things mean. Being an outlaw doesn't mean to us that you consider yourself above the law. It means that you you operate according to the laws of God.
You're not too far away down there, Laura, from your fellow former South African, Elon Musk.
Yes.
Have you ever interviewed him, and do you plan on interviewing him?
I have not. I would love to interview him. I've watched him for many years. One of the things, one of my favorite things about Elon Musk, because I was living in South Africa at the same time that he was, and when he created PayPal, I didn't really know too much about what that was. It was a long time ago, right at the beginning of the tech revolution, and I was a young journalist. But we all knew when Elon Musk sold PayPal, because there was a story. Well, there were many stories about
Laura,
it in the papers.
Do you have? I don't know what your schedule is. Can you stick around past the break here?
Sure.
So stick with us. We'll take about a 3-minute break, and then we'll come back with Laura Logan, because I got a lot to ask about where journalism is going and what your role is going to be in the future. Laura Logan joins us. Back after this.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
We're talking with investigative journalist Lara Logan. And Lara, you can find everything you want to know about Lara on her website, Lara, L-A-R-A, Logan, Logan.com, LaraLogan.com. Lara, I see from your website that you are, or have launched or about to launch, Lara Logan TV. Tell us about that.
Well, let me just tell you very quickly before that, Michael, what, at the end of that story with Elon Musk. And this is the thing that not many people know about him. When he first sold PayPal, one of the things that he did was he wanted to make every single person who works for him a millionaire. Now, this was in South African currency, rand. But at the same time, he gave every single person, whether it was the gardener who looked after the grounds at their offices, or it was the tea lady, who made them tea in the office, he gave every single person R1 million. And so that was my first real introduction to Elon Musk. And what I loved about that was his heart and his spirit of generosity. And so, I bear that in mind today when I look at what he's doing and how important he's become and how much he's changed the world. The Elon Musk I remember is the man who did that when nobody knew his name. And as far as Lara Logan TV goes, well, I've been trying for a long time to fight for investigative journalism. I think it's the responsibility of those of us who know the principles of real journalism and who have, survived and thrived in that world who understand what journalism is when it is what it was meant to be, right? Not the version of journalism that we have today, which is much more propaganda than anything else, unfortunately. So I'm working on launching my own show, One-on-One with Lara Logan, which is an interview-based show. I have my series, The Rest of the Story with Lara Logan. It takes a long time to basically take the 60 minutes format and turn that into long form. So every episode is kind of like a film. So it takes both time and money. And so you don't see me as often as people tell me they would like. But I'm working on that to do a podcast, because this podcast, though, will be very distinct from everything else that I'm doing. It'll be very obvious. It's much more informal. It's much more of a conversation. And that's because I want it to be distinct from the formal journalistic work, because I do think it's important that people don't forget what that really is. And if we don't keep that alive, then it's kind of like the craftsmanship. When you go to an old building and you see that extraordinary carpentry and that intricate work that you can barely find these days anymore, because people stopped putting that time and effort. Nobody wanted to pay for it. They wanted the cheaper machine version. Well, that's a little bit sometimes like podcasting, because it doesn't cost as much to sit in a studio and have your guests call in by remote. There's no investment in the next generation of journalists. There's no dispatching like in an old newsroom. You'd send journalists, you'd have journalists positioned all over the country. You would send people across the world. I was a war correspondent for CBS News, with the chief foreign correspondent, right? When news broke somewhere, we went there and saw it for ourselves. And it wasn't just enough to see it for yourselves, because other people have done that. Vice News did that, and yet they failed. And they failed because it wasn't based on substance. Wasn't, showing up on the front line is one thing. That's very important. But you got to understand what it is and what your environment is when you're there. So, in the old days, journalists were expected to be sort of mini historians and study the culture and study the people and be able to speak with some degree of proficiency. You didn't just show up in Aurora, Colorado and ask a bunch of people, are you a member of Tren de Aragua, the cartel, because they're not going to tell you the truth, because if they do, they're going to be killed. So showing up is one thing, but having that mentorship and wisdom and experience passed down from generation to generation of journalists, that's also something we don't want to lose. So I'm trying to hold on to some of that, because I think I have benefited for many years. I have learned firsthand, and I believe that I was, I've been in many dangerous situations in my life that I survived. I don't think I was meant to take that knowledge to my grave, and I think there are many other very good journalists out there who also know this, and that it's up to us, right, to be the guardians of our craft.
Yeah, the podcast version of journalism is very interesting. Some people have done very well with it. Of course, Tim Cass is big. There's a lot of others. Donald Trump did a lot of podcasts. In fact, a lot of people say, his podcast, it was his appearance on Joe Rogan, who lives down there in Texas near you, that really helped him win in this election. Have you thought about going on Joe Rogan's podcast? He's not too far away from you.
Oh, Joe Rogan is spectacular. I would happily go on his podcast, but as I understand it, you don't ask to go on there, and you get invited. So I'm waiting for my invitation.
You're waiting for your invitation. Okay, Joe. Joe, listen. Laura's not very far away from you. You can just pick
That's right.
Go to lauralogan.com and say, "Hey, Laura, you want to come over?" You know what was interesting about that Joe Rogan thing? The buzz is Donald Trump's 18-year-old son, Barron Trump, told him, "Hey, you got to go on these podcasts." To which he said apocryphally, "What's a podcast?" I'm just making that up, but it had great impact. And the thing about Trump is, because I'm sure you've met him. He's a very engaging guy. The guy is spectacular as a salesperson. He knows how to read the room, and he's a very likable guy.
Well, he also has the benefit, Michael, of having the truth on his side.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, there was a lot of, hand-wringing, and people said that Kamala Harris didn't run a good campaign and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is you can't run a good campaign when every single one of your policies is built on deception and dishonesty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality. So no one in America wants an open border except the very few open border ideologues who believe that this is the gateway to much greater power for them. Everybody else understands they don't want the cartels from Venezuela being sent here by a Venezuelan government. They get it that is an invasion by a foreign paramilitary organization. They may not have all the information and all the words, but they know what that means, right? And they know what,
Exactly.
Many people in this country fled from
Laura
that.
Logan,
they wanted to get away from it.
Thank you so much for taking so much time to talk with us today. Come back again if you would, please. And again, the website is Laura Logan, LARALOGAN.com. Laura Logan. Laura, thanks so much for joining us today. Come back soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Laura Logan. Hey, when we come back, EJ Haas will be here in studio. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.